Section 2.247. An internet media and market research firm measured the amount of time an individual spends viewing a specific web page. The data in the accompanying table represent the amount of time in seconds a random sample of 40 surfers spent viewing a web page. We want to be able to create a graphical summary and then write a sentence that describes the data. So here are the viewing times. Here's the 40 viewing times. Now, in order to create a graphical summary, we want to be able to draw a frequency histogram, and we're going to label the lower class limits of each class on the horizontal axis. And then for each class, we're going to draw a rectangle whose width is the class width and whose height is the frequency. Now remember that the classes do not overlap. Now, to determine the lower class limit of the first class, we have to choose the smallest data value in the data set, or a convenient number slightly lower than the smallest data value in the data set. So when we take a look at that number, the smallest data value in the data set is 4. So therefore, that's the smallest data value. Now, we want to go slightly lower than that. So a convenient number slightly lower than 4 is 0. So we're going to use 0 as the lower class limit of the first class. So we're going to use 0 as the lowest number now in the lower class limit. Then we have to decide on the number of classes. So generally, there should be between 5 to 20 classes. Now, the smaller the data set, the fewer classes should be used. So for the given data set of 40 data values, we're going to use 10 classes. Now, to compute the class width, we need to use the formula below. We need to take the largest data value and subtract the smallest data value and divide it by the number of classes. So the smallest data value and the number of classes are the following. We know that we have 10 as the classes. We know that the smallest data value is 4. And now we need to look up here and find out which one is the largest data value, and that is 199. So the largest data value from that set is 199. So we're going to take 199 and subtract the lower number 4 and divide that by 10. So we end up getting approximately 19.5. Now we're going to round this value up to a convenient number. In this case, we're going to round it up to 20. So therefore, the class width now is going to be 20. So that means that the viewing time in seconds is going to start at 0, and then to 20, and then to 40, and then to 60, and then to 80. Okay? So here's our first 5 classes, and if we continue, then we're going to go from 100 to 120 to 140 to 160 to 180. So now, in reviewing the data table, we're going to note that there are 12 occurrences when the amount of time an individual spends viewing a specific web page is in the interval between 0 and 19 seconds. So for the class between 0 and 19, the frequency is going to be 12. So that means when we come up here, right, and we find out what is the numbers that are in between 0 and 19, we're going to find out that there's 12. And then we can see that in between 20 and 39, we have 10. 40 to 59, we have 5. 60 to 79, there's 4. 80 to 99, there's 3. 100 to 119, there's 3. 120 to 139, there's 1. 140 to 159 is 0. 160 to 179 is 1. And then 180 to 199 is 1. So what we've done is we've created our own set of classes. But what we had to do is that we needed to figure out what was the lower class limit, what was the class width, by using the information from the data table that was given. Now, the next step is that work with StatCrunch, and from our specific problem, what we want to do is we want to be able to figure out how to then create a frequency histogram. So within the question, what we're going to do is, in order for us to create that histogram, we had to figure out what was the lower class limit and what was the class width for us to be able to then generate a frequency histogram. So we had to go through those steps now in order to create the histogram from this data. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. We're going to open it up, all the data up in StatCrunch. And so from here, here's our data set. So we're going to go ahead and graph and select histogram. We're going to go ahead and put the variable in there. Now remember now, what we did is we're starting at the value of 0 because that became our lower class limit. And we know that our class width from what we determined is 20. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put in the x-axis, which is the viewing time in seconds. And then the title is called Web Page Viewing Time. And so now we're going to go ahead and select Compute. So now we have our frequency histogram. You can see what the title looks like. And so now let's match that with this histogram here. And it does match because you can see here that we have between 0 and 20, we have our 12. Between 20 and 39, we have our 10, and so on. Now, the next question they want us to find out is what type of distribution is this? So in a uniform distribution, the frequency of each value of the variable is evenly spread out across the values of the variable. In a bell-shaped distribution, the highest frequency occurs in the middle and frequencies tail off to the left and the right of the middle. In a distribution that is skewed right, the tail to the right of the peak is longer than the tail to the left of the peak. And in a distribution that's skewed left, the tail to the left of the peak is longer than the tail to the right of the peak. So if we take a look at this graph, we can see that a distribution is skewed right because here our graph is going to be skewed right when we draw that.